All right, what's up, guys? Welcome back to the Modern Man's Playbook, the podcast built for the guy who wants to get more out of life, more money, more strength, better relationships, and above all, clarity in the chaos. Today, we're diving into something that might ruffle a few feathers, but that is exactly why it matters. It's a conversation most people avoid because it forces us to be brutally honest about the people around us and sometimes even about ourselves. We're going to talk about how to spot who's going to make it and who's not. That friend group that you roll with, the coworkers that you hang around every day, the people you let influence your energy, time, and beliefs, some of them are already dead weight. And if you're not careful, they're going to sink your ship before you even leave the harbor. Let's be real. Success isn't a random lottery. It's not about luck or waiting on opportunity. It's about character patterns, behavioral tells, long-term choices, and mindset. So once you know what to look for, you can start predicting outcomes way ahead of time. So today I'm going to show you the 4 red flag people to cut out now, the 4 green flag people you need to keep close, and 4 core signs to accurately predict who's got real potential. And like always, we're not doing this, with fluff or cliches. This is real world wisdom, from guys who've seen what works and what backfires. So let's get right into it. So these are the top 4 people to avoid. Let's start with the bad apples, because sometimes knowing what not to do and who not to surround yourself with is more important than anything else. So number 1 is going to be the angry guy. You guys know this dude. He's somewhere between, it could be in his late 20s, 30s to 50s. They got that constant scowl, way too much pride, and they treat like every rec league basketball game like it's Game 7 of the NBA Finals. I'm sure you guys know who I'm talking about. They chirp at the referees, right? They get into shoving matches over missed calls, and they act like their worth is tied to whichever team wins their co-rec volleyball game that night. Here's the thing. There's nothing wrong with competition, but when a guy's entire identity is wrapped up in winning meaningless battles, it's a major red flag. And because here's the truth. If you're really winning in life, you don't need to prove it with a rec league trophy. If your finances, your body, your business, and your relationships are dialed in, you're not going to risk it all for like a $25 Amazon gift card and a fake, ring pop championship, right? And this guy is angry because deep down they know that they missed the mark. They might have been promised something that never showed up. Maybe they think their job title or their status or their glory days would make them matter, but it doesn't. And now they're trying to, reclaim respect through small-time domination like co-rec basketball or volleyball. And it's sad, but it's also dangerous because this person will drag you into their drama. They're not building anything. They're just competing to distract themselves from what they're not. So stay away. Number 2 is the hater. And one of the easiest filters in life is that you will never meet a hater doing better than you. Just let that sit for a second. If someone truly has their life together, money, fulfillment, purpose, they don't have time to hate on you. They don't even think about you. People that are ahead, are too focused on their own mission to waste energy trying to tear down your mission. You gotta be that guy, but there's that guy that's always making snarky comments about what you're doing, or someone who has a hot take whenever you post something positive online. Like, that person's definitely not doing better than you. They're bitter, but not better than you. And hating is a form of reverse fandom. It's obsession with no respect. And in most cases, hating is, rooted in jealousy. That's why most haters are going to be your former friends or former fans. They admired you until you passed them. You don't need to argue with these people. You just got to recognize them and move on. They don't deserve a second of your oxygen. Number 3 is the sour turn. Here's a tough pill to swallow. Not everyone wants you to improve. Not everyone wants you to improve. Just let that sit. In fact, the second that you start leveling up, financially, mentally, physically, you'll notice that certain people start acting weird. Maybe they pull away. Maybe they throw shade at you. Maybe they say things like, "You've changed," right? We hear that one a lot. And that's not an observation, that's an accusation. See, when you evolve, you force people to confront their own stagnation. And that makes people uncomfortable. But here's the truth. Like, you didn't work that hard to stay the same. And the people who sour on you after you start winning are quietly revealing how they really felt all along. At the moment you notice it, cut ties, right? Don't explain yourself. Don't try to fix it. Just move on. Life is long, and if someone flips on you after one bad day or one stretch of growth and they don't understand it, it was going to happen eventually anyways. So you got to protect your energy. Don't let other people's insecurity affect your ambition. And number 4 is the success shamer. Now, this one's subtle, but it is deadly. This is the guy that's, trying to guilt trip you for winning. They make sarcastic comments at you like, "Must be nice," or "Don't forget us little guys." I'm sure you guys hear that all the time. And they pretend like they're joking, but they're not, because deep down, your success triggers their failure. And instead of doing the work to level up, they try to make you feel bad for escaping the pit. And if you got a friend who only shows up when you're down, but gets real distant when you're up, that's a hater in disguise. So never apologize for your growth, never minimize your wins, and never let someone make you feel guilty, for what they were too lazy or scared to do themselves. So that's the red flag rundown. Next, we're going to dive into the green flags and success predictors next. But first, I want you to think, who in your life fits one of those 4 profiles that I just mentioned? Who are you still giving energy to that's showing you loud and clear that they're not on your path? And you don't need to make a scene. You don't need to even explain it. Just shift your time, your focus, and presence away from them and toward the people who are really trying to win. Now let's talk about the people that you should actually keep around. We just cut out the dead weight, and let's just talk about the opposite side of the equation, the winners. These are the people that you want to build with, learn from, and keep around long term. And yeah, there's still real ones out there, but most of the time they don't shout. They move in silence. They deliver results. They quietly build the kind of life most people, can only dream about. So how do you find these people? And more importantly, how do you earn their trust and stay in their orbit? Let's break it down. These are the top 4 people that you should keep around you. Number 1 is the quiet builder. You're not going to meet this person in like a loud, flashy environment. They're not bragging, they're not dropping stats at the bar, and they're definitely not, on social media flexing with, cars and finance quotes. But what you'll notice is that something's different about them. They could be at like the gym at 10 a.m. on a Tuesday. They take random weekday trips. They don't check their phone obsessively, and they never complain about their boss. And why is that? It's because they are the boss, or at least they're building something that's going to make them one. The quiet person, the quiet builder moves off schedule. They're at the golf course at 3 p.m. They're shopping while everyone's working. They're always learning, but they rarely talk about it. You'll find these people at high-end gyms, boutique coffee shops, small events, and they almost always downplay what they do also. So if someone ever talks to you and says, I do a little bit of sales, like that's what I do for work, just a little bit of sales, but they're pulling up in a car that costs like 4 times your salary, like they're definitely, like they're probably on another level. And that's the people that you want to learn from. Number 2 is the uninterested interrogator. This is a little bit of a curveball. One of the biggest green flags is someone not asking what you do for work. Because people who are really successful don't lead with what do you do. They don't even care. They're not impressed by job titles. They know how fake it all is. Instead, they want to know how you think. They want to know what you're curious about, where you're headed. So these people will ask you about your favorite books. What side projects are you working on? Your take on something deep. And that's how you know they're playing the long game. They value people, not resumes. So if you find someone like this, you definitely got to lock in. Ask questions, show respect. These are the connectors who can open doors and shift your entire trajectory, even if they never post about it. And number 3 is the understater. And this one's pretty simple. If someone's hiding how successful they are, that's a green flag. It might sound strange, but one of the biggest ballers out there are usually the quietest. they'll tell you when they rent that they rent an apartment when they actually own like 5 properties. They'll tell you they work for a company when they're actually like the owners, right? They'll brush off, wins like they're no big deal, even when like it's a huge deal. And why is that? It's because they're not performing, right? They don't need validation. They've already won, and they're just protecting their energy and trying to keep the cloud chasers away. And you'll usually find that out after the fact. You'll hear it through someone else. You'll hear a story about them or see a post or get a referral and be like, wait, that guy was the one behind all that? And yeah, that's the person that you want around. And number 4 is the quiet pattern repeater. Winners have routines, period. You'll notice that they do the same things over and over because they found out what actually works. Whether it's a workout routine or a daily schedule or way they handle meetings, they follow patterns, and it's predictable, boring, but it's highly effective. And they stick to these patterns. It doesn't mean that they're rigid. They adapt when needed, but they don't chase trends or shiny objects or drama. They protect their bandwidth in life, and they protect it like their life depends on it. Because in a way it does. And if you find someone with this like boring discipline, that's your guy, right? Like, 'cause boring is the new rich. Consistency is gonna beat the flash every time. And the big question is, now that you need to know what to look for, the question poses is, how do you get around people like this? So I'll break it down in the 4 quick steps, and it's a lot simpler than you think. So these are how to attract 4 steps to attract high quality people in your life. Step 1 is research before you reach. Before you slide into anyone's DMs trying to hit them up, do your homework. Find someone who's built what you want. Learn about them. Listen to their content. Read what they've written. Figure out what their values are. Don't ask lazy questions. Don't ask things you could Google, and definitely don't DM them saying, "Can I pick your brain?" Respect their time by showing them that you've respected their journey. Step 2 is ask small, specific questions, right? Keep it 3 to 4 sentences max, right? Be polite, be clear, ask for advice on one thing, and make it easy to answer. Like, for example, right, you reach out to someone, "Hey man, I heard you mention XYZ in your podcast. I'm currently working on XYZ. I've hit a snag with Y. If you had to start over, how would you approach it?" That's it. And you're showing that you've paid attention to them, and you're doing the work, and you're not asking for a handout. You're just asking for insight. And step 3 is show the result. And this is where 99% of people fail. If that person that you reached out to gives you advice and it works, circle back. Show them the outcome. Even a quick, "Hey, I tried your suggestion. It worked like a charm. I appreciate you." It goes a long way. And most successful people never hear back. So when they do, it stands out, and it tells them that you're not a clout chaser. You're like actually a doer. And number 4 is stay in light contact. Don't smother people. Don't over ask. Just send out the occasional update or, a thank you note when appropriate. Maybe give them a referral or send them an article that you think they'd enjoy, or a gift, if they've helped you out big time. But keep it real, keep it rare, but, still keep it alive. And that's how you build a network, worth having. So now you've got the filters, the 4 people to avoid, the 4 people to lean into. But here's what I want to emphasize. This isn't about being judgmental. It's about being intentional. You're the average of, they always say this, you're the average of the 5 people that you spend the most time with. And that's not, just a cute quote. That's like a survival strategy. If you're the sharpest guy in every room you walk into, you're not growing at all. You're basically babysitting people. You want to be around the people who challenge you challenge you to be better, who remind you you've got another level. The people who make you uncomfortable in the right ways. And more importantly, you want people, around you who are already living proof of the life you want. So we're going to go a little bit deeper. I'm going to walk you through the 4 major signs that someone is going to win long term. Even if they're a friend or a colleague or even yourself. It's one of the most valuable prediction tools, I think I've ever built. And if once you hear it, you won't be able to unsee it. And like I said, we filtered out the losers. We've identified the people worth attracting. And I think, predictive behavior is a real game changer. And if you're paying attention, you can spot the people that are going to break through before they do. It's like being able to invest in Google, when it was running out of the back of a garage. So here are the 4 major tells that someone is built for the long haul. Number 1 is high self-awareness. This is the single biggest trait. It's not hustle, not intelligence, not even talent. The first real sign that someone is going to win is the ability to objectively assess themselves, the good, the bad, the ugly. You ask them about what they're good at, and they answer with precision. You ask them about what they're bad at, they don't flinch. They already know this type of stuff. They're not making excuses, blaming their boss, or talking about how unfair the world is. They're studying their own behavior like a lab rat. They're aware of what triggers them. They're aware of their bad habits. They're aware of their weak spots. And most importantly, they're actually working on themselves. People like this rarely stay stuck. Even if they're broke, they're going to figure it out because they're not attached to an image. They're, obsessed with improvement. And that alone puts these type of people above 90% of the population. And number 2 is the people that are willing to get worse to get better. And this one's subtle, but it's really powerful. If you ever see someone, let's say at the gym, working on their form and lifting less weight than usual, it's someone who's actually going to get stronger because they're not performing for the crowd. They're, fixing their foundation. And this shows up in business too. Maybe they take a step back in the income, in their income to build a skill, right? Maybe they, swallow their ego and they take feedback. Maybe they start over on a project whenever they realize it's not working. Most people can't do that. They'd rather look good than actually be good. They're married to their method. They want progress without the pain. But the real winners out there, they're, surgical with their decisions. If something isn't working, they're going to scrap it and try again. And they're not loyal to being right. They're loyal to the results. So if you know someone willing to get worse today to win tomorrow, don't lose them. They're a rare breed. And number 3 is delayed gratification and prioritization. Everyone talks about delayed gratification, but most people don't really know what it means. It's not skipping dessert or saving a few bucks. It's sacrificing your ego, your comfort, your social status for years because you believe in something bigger than yourself. It's like turning down a $90,000 a year job because you're building a business that might not pay you for 3 years. It's living below your means, right? Skipping parties, getting laughed at for a while because you're building leverage that no one else sees. And winners don't just delay gratification, they prioritize around it. They structure their life around long-term rewards. They filter, decisions through like a 5-year lens. And they're not chasing dopamine. They're chasing future dominance. If you see someone like that early, bet on them for sure. This one's a fun one and it definitely flies under the radar. It's someone who's constantly learning weird stuff. So if your friend group has that one person, I think everyone does, where someone's always learning something random, pay attention. I think that could definitely be a sleeper pick. They're reading about niche markets, or they're, learning something, random like software, or messing around with imports, or watching deep dive documentaries, or trying to learn Portuguese, just because. You might laugh at them, right? But that person is, about to find an idea that no one else sees or thought of, and they're going to build something out of it. Because creativity isn't born from formulas, it's born from cross-pollination. Like that weird dude learning about mushroom farming and crypto, they're gonna build like a fucking farm to table blockchain platform. You know what I mean? Like, it probably sounds like I'm joking, but like that's literally how like innovation works. These people become founders and creators and industry shifters, not because they're smarter, but because they're just curious. And in a world where most people scroll for 8 hours a day and never pick up a book, curiosity is a superpower. But let's get practical, because it's not just about spotting others, it's about spotting yourself. Go through these 4 traits and rate yourself. Are you brutally self-aware? Are you willing to break and rebuild? Are you playing a 5-year game or a 5-minute one? Are you feeding your curiosity, or are you numbing it? And if you're strong in 2 of these areas, then you're probably ahead of most. If you got like 3 or 4 of these checked off, like you're on the right track and you can keep stacking. If you've got none of these traits or one of them, the good news is that there's not a solution out there. It's just you. And all you have to do is start behaving like someone who wins long term. But look, though, I'm not a fortune teller. I can't guarantee you who's going to make $10 million, who's going to crash, or who's going to blow up next. But what I can do is study the patterns, right? Human nature isn't going to change. And once you start seeing how people behave under pressure around success or when no one's watching, is when you can start spotting the future before it happens. Your buddy, like I said, your friend before that always blames other people and talks about haters and gets defensive when you level up. Let him go. Your friend who's always learning, who doesn't post much but quietly improves every year. Don't lose that person. Your coworker who sacrifices short-term success to build something real behind the scenes. Stay close to that person. Every level of your life is going to demand a new circle, and not everyone is meant to make the jump with you. Some people are there for a season, others for a lesson, and a few people for a lifetime. So you got to figure out who's who. And always, 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 always bet on behavior over words, because that's how you stop wasting time and start building a life with winners. I hope you guys enjoyed that, man. My name's James. Appreciate all the support you guys have been giving on social media. Drop a subscribe button if you're new. Give me a like, and I'll see you guys next time.